Good evening, everyone. Happy Sunday. Once again, you thought you were going to see Shannon and Josh, but you get to see us again. They are finally traveling home to Florida today, so we are going to talk about depression today, but I do want to last video, the last 45 seconds, that was hilarious.
Yeah, I guess if you want to get over depression for just a second,
Yeah.
watch the last 45 seconds of our last Facebook
Let's
Live.
just say I will be in charge of ending the video from now on, but that, I guess, it shows you what it takes to talk about this kind of stuff. It is draining and it's hard, but I'm glad that we can, and I hope that we are helping someone out there. But that, if you want real and you want raw, there you go. You got it.
And I don't know if Stacy mentioned this before, but her enthusiasm that she comes on here with right now is more of a nervousness and an anxiousness to do this as opposed to some sheer enjoyment or excitement.
It's true.
Because she's usually stressing out a little bit about all the details prior to, and then as soon as we push on Facebook Live, it's like, hi.
It's a giddy nervousness. That's you know that.
Anyway, just so that you don't have an unreal picture of this woman, she...
Yes, I do get a little stressed about it and anxious because I'm going to talk about some hard things, and I just hope that we can just touch someone and help someone. That's really the purpose. So yeah, depression. That is, it's a hard thing to go through. Really, really hard. It's a hard thing to talk about sometimes, but it does need to be talked about. Like I said in the post when we announced that we were going to talk this Sunday, I mentioned that when we were talking about the 5 stages of grief, all 4 of us, I was like, yeah, I don't think I went through depression. I was really sad, but I don't think so. And then as I read about situational depression, I thought, yeah, I certainly did go through it. So there's 2 different kinds. There's situational depression, which is basically a short-term stress-related type of depression, and you can experience after like a traumatic life event or a series of events, and it's like an adjustment disorder, and it makes it hard to adjust to everyday life. And so obviously ours was caused by the loss of our daughter. It can be caused by relationship problems or illnesses or problems at work or school. So, and the symptoms, and when I read the symptoms, I was like, yeah, I could totally pick those out in my grief journey. And so obviously there was sadness, but I was like, okay, I feel so sad because I have had this death. But some of the ones that stuck out to me as I look back were just kind of my disinterest or lack of enjoyment of things that I usually liked to and love to do. Like, for example, I love holidays. I get so excited to decorate and to make a big deal out of the food and the things that we do that day, but after Lily passed, it was gone. Like, Christmas, I was just like, like, okay, I gotta go kind of through the motions. I gotta,
You're speaking of the first Christmas.
Yeah, and even still, like, it's not as bad, but it's not like getting ready for it all, I guess, is just kind of, that enjoyment and that excitement has gone in. Like, my kids will be like, well, where's the St. Patrick's decorations, or aren't you going to put decorations up for Valentine's? Like, the oomph to do it was totally gone, and I just didn't feel like it. And it wasn't just the first Christmas. it was probably the second and the third, but but with the Christmas Day for sure was still like the, because it's your other children that are so excited, and just to see their excitement, so that brought back like I still kept that excitement during Christmas Day or whatever, but
And I would add in part of that, from my perspective, is Lily was over the top excited about all that stuff with Stacy, and it was somebody that Stacy could on 100% level relate with and be. Lily was like a charger up. If you mentioned something, she would
so
amp
excited,
Stacy up for the celebration. Which I'll just tell you, Stacy doesn't need additional amping up. She, when I married this woman, I mean, she's always has these. I didn't know there were so many days to celebrate in a year, but which is a good thing. But I think that was, from my perspective, one of the things that probably brought on a little bit of the sadness is that Lily was kind of like your charger up partner, and not having that. She does a better job than I've done.
Well, and I think too, like she was the one that, like, when I did it, she's like, "Thank you so much, Mom. Thank you. You're like, this is so awesome. Thank you so much." And just the gratitude that she gave, and like I think Isabel does a good job, but it was just they have very different dynamics and personalities, so it was just that one piece that I miss so much. So.
Well, and I think that's a natural. I think that would be a natural reason to have some depression or some time where after an event you do have to go through an adjustment, because things are different.
Yeah, it's a new
and
normal.
they are permanently different. It's not like Lily's just gone for the first Christmas. She will be gone for every Christmas and every holiday thereafter. So there is I mean, I think in some ways there is a little bit of that recurring, that even though this is one of the 5 phases of grief, we might see this face over
every
and over again.
Christmas comes along or whatever. Yeah. And I think also another one was like avoiding social interactions and situations. And I love to be with my family. I love to be with my friends. I love to go out and do things with a lot of people. But after she passed away, all I wanted to do is like be with my family. And and it was hard for me to like go to big gatherings, and maybe part of that was like people ask me like, how are you doing, and sometimes I was good, because sometimes you're numb. Sometimes I had spent the day or the hour crying, and so I didn't really want to talk about it, and so it was a lot of like, I'm doing okay kind of thing. I won't say that I like totally avoided, because I would still go to like book club and things like that, but I think my shift kind of changed. Like, instead of always wanting to go to this thing and that thing socially, I was like, oh, I just feel like staying home and just being with us. And like, we used to invite a lot of people over, and I'm just like, no, I just want to do it with just us.
Yeah, and I would say,
because I feel it was probably overwhelming for me to like host someone. It was. And when you have that like stress component of hosting, that there is a normal stress component, but to put that grief and depression on top of that just makes it anxious, very anxious.
and I think that's something. I probably am the one that invites people over for the most part, but I even found myself inviting fewer people over and wanting to not have that interaction. And I've also seen amongst my social circle just a difference in terms of, and I think some of that still continues to linger, just I don't know if it's a checking out or a tendency to, I don't know, just want to share less of my heart as part of that, what I would describe as just part of the depression, and when I speak of this, it's not something that has hung constant, but it just is like little spots or little times along the way that hits that just changes me from who I normally would be. Because you've mentioned to me sometimes like I'm less
Yeah, like
inclined.
he's always wanting to, like, totally up for the social. He talks a lot. He likes to be around people. And there were times, yeah, I don't feel like going, I'm like, what? Like, it was just a surprise to me because usually he was very social.
And I
any
think
other things?
and I think sometimes along with that is, I think of it like in some ways maybe when you break your arm or hurt your leg or something and you have a cast on your arm, everywhere you go for the first whatever times that people see you, your friends, family, people at work, whatever, everybody always asks, "Oh, what happened to you?" And so there's some part of you that feels like you have to retell that story that you don't really want to retell all the time. And people are very well-meaning, and I encourage people to continue to ask, but sometimes when people ask, "How are you doing?" or "Are you doing okay?" I felt like maybe I wasn't feeling great or wasn't doing that okay, and I didn't want to tell people about that in that instance or at that time. I didn't want to express. So that's for me some of the reason why I didn't want to be around people, is because I wear my feelings on my sleeve of my shirt, so to say, and so I didn't want to be around people when I know I wasn't feeling like myself, and I was feeling those feelings of depression or sadness or
And I think,
and I think situational depression is a good thing to recognize. That's what I'm speaking of. I've never been diagnosed with clinical depression, and I know that that's a totally different, it can be a totally different situation.
and I think along with some of the other symptoms, like sadness, hopelessness, and regular crying for sure, is part of this
Different
whole,
change in sleeping patterns.
yeah. And so the regular crying, like, I didn't know a person could cry so much. Like, it was almost like I would I'm like, am I ever going to run out of tears? Because I would go through boxes, and like my time to cry was at night when my kids were asleep, and we would get tons of these cards, and Josh would bring them home from the office, and I'd just go through them, and it made me feel so loved, and it was probably a crying of both hurt and gratefulness at the same time. But definitely my times to cry were like really cry really hard were at night, and I cried during the day too, but the really big cries were at night, and I just really remember, it was a lot of late nights.
Yeah.
So.
Well, for me, one of the additional things that I have felt as part of the situational depression with grief is kind of what Stacy said when party planning or hosting people, there's a stress involved. Well, for work and dealing with all that I deal with at work, or my assignments and responsibilities at church, or just being a father in general, what that entails to me, to being a good husband and all that, the natural stresses of those things, they're real always, and sometimes they can be intense. But with grief piled on top of that, I know for me, and Stacey could probably say that I certainly have experienced more bouts of short periods of hopelessness. Mm-hmm. Like, I can't see light at the end of the tunnel. I don't know how I'm going to make it through this, or I don't know how I'm going to it seems like what I do every day, just in and out, it's leading to nowhere. It's to no avail. I can't possibly meet all of the demands that
well, it's
are
like,
upon me.
It kind of makes me think of a picture in my mind, like you're trying to climb this mountain, say, but you keep just slipping on these rocks. So you're not really, like, you're trying really hard to, like, go somewhere, but you're keep slipping so you don't go anywhere. And it kind of feels like you said, like, this is just like, I'm doing this in vain. Like, why should I even try?
I'm working so hard, but I'm getting nowhere.
Yeah.
And I recognize also those are not new feelings. I had those feelings prior to Lily's loss from time to time, and I think those are normal, natural feelings. But with that loss, those feelings were much more dark and much more intense and much more overcoming, amplified, like Stacey is saying.
And I remember we were in a car accident, and so we had all these medical bills, and that was one thing that I just was like, I can't face this. Like, that's like, I have to talk about like what happened to these people, and I have to, like, that's the last thing I want to do is take care of this insurance stuff, because as everyone knows, it's just terrible to, anyways.
The systems are
the system, yeah. So that was one thing I didn't want to face at all. I just was like, I'm just going to let it sit there, and I don't want to even deal with it. I didn't want to talk to anyone about it, but eventually we had to. But so things that can, okay.
I was just going to say, maybe there may be other things. There's maybe some things that we didn't experience, like some of the stuff Stacey, I know, has research said that maybe a disinterest in food. That never hit me. I'm always interested in food. Sleeping difficulties. I never have had a problems going to sleep, and the part, if there's a sleeping difficult for me, maybe getting up in the morning was harder, but it was more tied back to that feeling of hopelessness, going to bed and having those feelings, and then waking up the next morning, and if those feelings were still with me, I didn't want to get out of bed. Like, I had no motivation to really be and perform and do those things that I normally would kind of get me up and going.
Mm-hmm.
Are there other things that you've read about that you didn't experience?
Those ones, there was like trouble carrying out daily activities. I had a lot of support because I had broken my collarbone, so for a couple months we had people here doing that for me, which was such a help because I couldn't. It was my right hand, and I'm right-handed, but so that's like when I was in the haze of grief, and I didn't really even know what was going on around me, but so I was grateful for that. And then when all the help left, it was kind of like I was just kind of pushed into life again, and I had 4 other children I had to care for. So
are you saying that was one that you
that
did
was
or did
actually
not
one
with?
That I did it. I guess I did it.
Just without purpose, or just?
It was probably just in a numbing state, like, okay, we just got to push through and we got to do this, and there wasn't a lot of like happiness that I usually had. Like, good morning. I was kind of trudging along through it. But so I would say I was able to do it, but I didn't do it very happily. Things that helped me.
I was just going to say, before we move on to things that have helped, I mean, obviously thoughts of self-harm or thoughts of suicide would be something that would also be part of that. And
which, I didn't have like thoughts of suicide, but I did think like I would be fine to die because then I could see Lily again. So there was no like thought of suicide, but there was like, I'd be fine if my life was over. Totally.
Yeah, and I as I talked last, I think it was last time that I mentioned, death has always kind of been in my face, and I think that for me, some people say when somebody commits suicide or something, or somebody talks about that, they show like a significant amount of panic or alarm. For me, those thoughts have been with me or somewhere in the back of my mind ever since I was a child. And I don't know that I've ever had extreme or overwhelming inclinations toward suicide, but I've certainly thought through that, and not so much as a result of Lily's death, but in those states of hopelessness where you feel like everything's piled on you. I tell Stacey more my code word is I just want to leave everything. That's like I want to just leave, go to Alaska that's my kind of my retreat, my somewhere in my brain that I think if I left to Alaska and erased my name and all that I'm responsible for, or all that I'm committed to, that somehow I would find relief from that, and I think, or escape, and I think that in my mind, those are some of the things that I think that when those thoughts of suicide come as or thoughts of self-harm, it's somehow trying to release you from that suffering or whatever. At least that's for me. And again, I'm very cautious, and I want to make it very clear I'm not tempted or any of those types of things, but those thoughts for my brain, for Joshua Nehring, those have been normal and reoccurring thoughts probably throughout my life whenever anything gets intensely difficult, or my world gets turned upside down, or I'm disappointed in very major ways.
And I, for sure, I was driving when the accident happened, and so it took me a while I had the broken collarbone, but even after that, I was very anxious when I started driving again.
Nervous, you know?
Oh, yeah. So that was one thing that was hard, yeah.
And there may be other things, well, not maybe, there for sure are other symptoms or other ways that people might experience situational depression. And again, back to the whole reason we're even talking about this stuff is we want to be able to help identify for individuals that are going through loss that it's normal to feel these things, it's natural to go through these stages, it's perfectly okay to go through them. We want to help you identify that this may be the place that you're at, so that then you can acknowledge it, do what you need to do to work with it, to process it, to not feel alone, to not feel isolated, to not feel confused or worried that you're feeling these, but to recognize them, because I don't think you can deal with an enemy or something, a struggle, without truly identifying what it is that you're struggling with. And so you've got a number of things that you want to talk about in terms of ways that have helped.
Yeah, and also I was just going to say, like, usually with the situational depression, it subsides after a time when it becomes more manageable, and all of that. So some things that I think have helped, well, I know that have helped me, is running and exercising. After Lily passed away, it's probably the next year, right? Anyways, we decided we were going to run a marathon.
Yeah, it was 2018.
Yeah, and that for sure was very therapeutic for me. And I think, and just taking time to be still and to be with my thoughts. I wrote in my journal a ton more, and I was able to just, like, as I wrote, I was able to, like, help my thoughts and my feelings just come out, but also help me find meaning and to see a more clear perspective. And eating better, totally, always, I think, just in normal life can help you feel better. And I think, as I've said, I've had such an amazing support system, but as I've come out of that deep, like, overbearing grief that is so prevalent in the beginning, and it's still hard, it's still painful, but it's just not so overbearing every single minute of the day.
And so are you saying
and
that
so
in
I'm saying
context
that,
of support, or?
So, sorry, I'm going to make myself clear. So, I think during that haze, or that time when I was just so overburdened with this grief, I would say thank you, and I would say, just tell people how thankful I was for them. But I don't know if I can ever say thank you enough to them, but as Layla has passed, and I've seen the love and support that was given to Shannon, it just, like, reminded me, and, like, just how much it meant to me, all of the awesome support that I've had and all the nice things that were done for me. So just recently I've started to write thank you notes again and just tell these people and how grateful I am to them, and that what they did, even though it was so small, will be etched in my heart forever. So I hope that strengthens our relationships, and that we can, so I think strengthening your support system in whichever way you see fit would help that too.
Well, I think not only strengthening the support system, but you finding a way that you can be of support to somebody else who might be sharing a similar story or a similar thing, and it gives you a chance to what I call commiserate. And normally that's a negative thing in my brain, is when people commiserate with one another, but during these times it is important to mourn with those that mourn. It's important to find opportunities to let your heart bleed with those who are also having bleeding hearts, because this is a time where you truly can walk where you've never walked before, and you may never walk again. And when you're uniquely in those moments of hurt, you can reach people's hearts and you can touch people's lives in ways that you might not in the past been able to, probably not in the past, and it might be hard to find yourself in that same hurt to walk with them again. And I think that's for me, that's something that I probably is natural. It comes to me. I like to help people, and when I'm out and finding people that are also, for one reason or another, struggling in life, and me being able to reach out to them in some meaningful way and share, I leave a better person for sure. And I always hope that they were somehow bettered by that visit, that I leave a bettered person, without a doubt.
And for sure there's that thought of what's the point of living, because you loved that person so much that hurt is so much because of how much you love that person. And so,
are we going a different direction?
Oh,
I'm just. Are you tying to what I was just talking about?
I just saw a comment from Shannon, and she said that someone had reached out and people were feeling like, what's the point in living? So like I said before, there was a...
we choreograph these things flawlessly, so...
So like I said,
change in
before,
direction.
I had thought, I'd be fine to die, because then I could be with Lily, and because that joy is taken for a time, that the normalcy that is like ripped from right under you. Like it's like your world is like broken. Your heart is like shattered to pieces. So yeah, you're gonna have that feeling. Like, what's the point? Did you ever have that feeling?
Yeah, that's what I just explained.
Okay. I was probably reading this and I wasn't really listening.
One of the things that helps with situational depression is listening to when your spouse is talking. I think that helps every once in a while.
But like I've said before, it's okay to have those thoughts. It's okay to have those feelings, but just don't stay there for very long. And we're going to say it over and over again, because it is what has helped. It is what has healed. Find someone to serve, even if it's just a text of thank you for your smile or something. Like, that will heal a part of your heart that you didn't know could be, that you didn't think could be, but it's so true.
So one of the things that I thought about this week that also has been helpful, in terms of kind of pulling me out of a place where I don't like being and don't really want to leave, which is weird, but is changing my environment, doing something to change my environment. So I've talked about doing kind of small acts of kindness, or finding or looking for something like that. One of the things that I think is is neat is if you can find a little gift to give, whether it's a book that you listened to recently, you can share that book with somebody, or whether it's a song you heard and that's recently touched you, share that with somebody, and that can be like a little gift from you to them. And when you do that, it pulls you out of that frame of mind, and it might be just pulling you out for a little bit, which is okay. But if you do those on a regular basis, those will be constant little opportunities to just pull yourself out of that, and maybe in those frame of minds you can think a little bit more clearly. You can see a little relief from that depression or that hurt that you're feeling. And so just finding little ways to offer gifts, and maybe that could be a monetary gift or whatever, but really just finding something that I think has meant something to you. A thank you note certainly is a gift to anybody who receives it. I did an exercise. It wasn't for Lily's loss, but I was kind of just overwhelmed with all that was going on, and I think I was having, in that time of my life, some situational depression just for the situation that I was in. And Stacy's talked a number of times about the power of gratitude, and I made a list of all the people that, or at least all that I could think of, to send notes to, and I don't think I made it through all of them, but I, for a period of time, was sending out these little notes of thank you to these people that had been kind of like crossroads people in my life that helped change the direction for good in my path in life. And that was really helpful for me during that period of time, to put the focus on thinking and sending those little gratitude gifts to those people. And a number of them really appreciated or reached back and let me know how much that meant to them, which then again pulls me out of that situational depression.
So I read also that with clinical depression, it happens when, just shifting over to this side of the depression spectrum, but it happens when there's like no identifiable cause. And sometimes people will start with this situational depression and it will develop into clinical depression. Or they similarly...
Okay, you're saying that they just don't come out of it, and so they kind of like start living in that area?
And similarly, people with clinical depression may experience an overwhelming situation that worsens their depressive symptoms. So I don't know. I have not experienced clinical depression. Josh has not either. But there are many people that do, and it's one of those things that just like when you have cancer, you're going to go to the doctor and they're going to give you medicine to fix it. But cancer is like this, someone's bald, they have cancer kind of thing. But depression, like this deep clinical depression, is something that people there's nothing really on the outside of someone's body to identify it with, but at the same time it is a sickness, and so they need to do the same thing as someone with cancer, to go and get therapy or medication or whatever. But there is a friend of mine, her name is Cheryl Roper, and she has been very, very open with her struggle with depression, and it's really been inspiring to me to see her share her life. Like, I know it's hard for her to share that part of her. When I knew her, I didn't know she had it, and then she came out kind of on social media, but she wants to help those around her who struggle with the same thing, and so she's open with it, and I admire her greatly. And so I just wanted to, you're going to show it? It's at seeme.notthestigma. So if you go on Instagram, then she has a public Instagram account that she shares. And the quote that I got from her little description on Instagram was, "Find hope and courage, fight stigma, and prevent suicide." So if any of you are at that point, or even if you're not, I think even if you have this situational depression, you're deep into it, I would go and even reach out to her, because you can message her, you can direct message her, and she would love to help, because she wants to hear your story. She says, I want to hear your story, and she wants to bring people together. And so I looked at her account, and I just wanted to read a quote that I loved. No, it's going to disappear.
So while you're looking up that quote, I think one of the things that's clear in research that tips people, it doesn't eliminate, and it's not a direct cause and effect, but it tips the scale strongly towards positive mental health. Sleeping habits is one of the most effective ways and most powerful ways to really change the chemicals within your body is a healthy, normal, and regular sleep schedule. Sleep is powerful, and we need to get proper sleep. Obviously, we talked about that sometimes with situational depression you can't sleep, which is obviously that's a battle. But striving to find healthy sleep, eating healthy foods. This is a time you're not. Are you okay? Eating healthy foods is also one of the things that can powerfully actually cause a physiologic change in you, just like eating unhealthy foods cause a negative physiologic consequence. So eating healthy foods, support systems, we can't overemphasize the need for support, and if you can turn it to a service support, so you are a support to somebody else and sharing your story with them, I know that will change the actual physiologic chemicals that flow through your brain. A gratitude journal, there's great studies that show that you can change the actual chemical levels of what's the one that we always talk about? Dopamine, melatonin. These very, very powerful substances can be affected positively through gratitude journals, and going through that cycle actually changes your brain. Stacy mentioned exercise, and it doesn't have to be a marathon. It doesn't have to be just getting outside. 30 minutes, if you can just even if you can just get out at least once a day somewhere, feel sunshine, feel wind, feel rain, just feel the elements and change that situation.
Change your environment. It's been proven that it can help. It totally helps. Okay, so she just made this post, and she said so
you've shared with them where you can go to?
Yeah. All right. So she had a picture of her on the bed, and she had just finished crying and wanted to keep the darkness and harmful thoughts to myself. But I allowed some of what I was going through to be captured, even though I knew I wouldn't write this post until I had a little more distance. Today I'm feeling much better, still not 100%, but smiling isn't painful, which brings us to we are strong. There are a lot of negative connotations with mental illness. This is because people often look at it from the wrong side. When you keep it underlying person in mind, see me, not the stigma, you can view it from a different angle. You can see that instead of being weak people, prone to giving into dark thoughts and feelings, to confusion or irrational behaviors, we are actually strong people who keep trying, even when it feels like all the odds, and sometimes the entire world too, are against us. We wake up in the morning even when just the small act of breathing is almost too much to bear. We get out of bed even though every single day is a battle. We keep fighting even when it doesn't seem like there is anything to gain by winning, and it seems like we will never win anyway. Just because you cannot see or understand the foe we battle, it is no less real or significant than any other health challenge in life. And even though I've told you you can't fight against us, you can fight with us and for us. When you truly love us and support us, you can battle our demons with us. You can add to our strength, especially when ours is running low. So I just really, really love that. Like, it just gave me the chills and the tears because she's just being so real and she's telling it how it is. And if you feel like you're weak, well, if you keep trying every day, that means you're strong, because this battle of situational depression or clinical depression, whatever you're going through, it's a hard road. And even though you feel weak, you're so strong because you are doing it. You're doing that hard thing. You're getting out of bed. So if you can look at it like, I got out of bed this morning, or I got dressed today, that's winning, and that's strength, because you're doing it.
One of my favorite talks on this topic that just came to my mind was from Elder Jeffrey R. Holland in October of 2013. You can type this in, Stace. You want to type this in? It's titled "Like a Broken Vessel," where he shares some of his thoughts and the doctrines that the Church of Jesus Christ teaches with regards to depression. And what he shares in this is exactly how I have experienced this in my life. And it's a very powerful talk. So,
2013,
October 2013. In conclusion here tonight, I just want to thank whoever takes the time to listen, for taking this time. This is healing for Stacy and I to go through this process. I never imagined that I would go kind of formally through this and then share my feelings, but it's very helpful. We had somebody reach out to us this last week and just share with us their thanks for doing this, which is always kind of catches us off guard, but it means a lot, and I appreciate that individual for reaching out and letting us know that it's blessing their lives. And she was telling us how she has been sharing some of the things from here with some of her friends. So that's our ultimate hope, is that it's not about us, it's not about Josh and Shannon, it's not about Josh and Stacy. It's about you, it's about the community, it's about making the world a better place. We live and we strive to live off of the model of see good, do good, and then share good. So we hope with all of our hearts that this message tonight on depression associated with grief and loss can somehow brighten and bring a light in some small way to somebody that needs it. So we don't know for sure. We'll put the pressure on Shannon and Josh, but we think that they're actually...
They will.
Oh, they will.
They will. They're going to speak
bargaining on bargaining next week.
Sunday, yes.
Okay.
I know a lot of you are very excited to see them again.
So please reach out. We hope that you found some joy in the invitations that we've shared in the past about finding ways to serve, about identifying the phase of grief that you're in and writing it down and writing about it. We hope that this week maybe you could...
Well, last week's challenge was to write every day something that you're grateful for. And I have done this. Rachel Hollis, she has a Start Today journal that I really like. And you write 5 things that you're grateful for, and then just your goals. But it's really been, as you take the time to think about what you're actually grateful for and then take the time to actually write it down, it's very powerful. So I would just encourage you to keep finding things that you're grateful for and write them down, because it's a powerful tool.
So one of the things I was just going to share in closing was that there's a book that I read a while back, and it's kind of researched in my life, and has a lot of tools in it to face and bout all of these things that grief brings on, and it's called The Jackrabbit Factor by Leslie Householder. And we'll write that down as well. Leslie Householder, The Jackrabbit Factor. And it's kind of it's almost a childrenish type story or analogy that she writes about, but I really have found many of the principles that she talks about in there very good tools to deal with these types of things, whether it is anger, whether it is depression, whether it is blaming, whether it is just hurt, whether it is a hopelessness. There's a lot of really unique things there. So I would invite you to take a look at that, and please let us know if there's other things that we can do for you guys. So
Okay, love you guys.
thank you.